All right, is everyone seeing this? Good to go? Great. So firstly, I just want to say I really enjoyed Zach and all of the UCF trivia. I am 3 times a night. I bleed black and gold. I absolutely love this institution, and it is my honor and pleasure to work for the institution where I was educated. So I'm very happy to share with you the financial aid process. We know that for a lot of students and families, financial aid and funding your education is something that you're really trying to get a good grasp of. So we hope that this presentation provides you with the information that you need so that you can move forward in the financial aid process. So today you're going to learn about the financial aid process. We're going to highlight some of the things that students and families have to navigate in order to receive your financial aid funding. We're going to also talk about the types of aid available. Our office administers a variety of different types of financial aid, and we want to make sure that our students and families know all the various opportunities available to you as students at the University of Central Florida. And then we're going to highlight just a few things that we want to make sure that each family walks away remembering. We know that financial aid is nuanced and there are lots to wrap your head around, but we want to make sure that we give you everything you need to be successful on this journey. So starting with the financial aid process. So with financial aid, the process starts with the free application for federal student aid, also known as the FAFSA. The FAFSA is a prerequisite to receive many types of financial aid funding, including federally funded student loans. We encourage all of our students to complete the FAFSA, as even if you're not anticipating getting what we call gift aid, which comes in the form of grants, we still want students to complete the FAFSA because the FAFSA is sometimes required for scholarships. So you want to complete the FAFSA. There are multiple ways to get to the U.S. Department of Education's FAFSA. You can start on studentaid.gov. You can start on FAFSA.gov. Just a reminder, the first word in FAFSA is free. So if you ever land on a site that is asking you to pay to submit the FAFSA, you're in the wrong place. So we utilize the financial aid application or the FAFSA to determine your eligibility for federal aid, institutional grant, and some forms of state aid. So it's really important to have one on file if you want to be considered for these types of programs. The FAFSA becomes available on October 1st of the year prior to the upcoming fall semester. And our school code at the University of Central Florida is 003954. We've established what we call a priority filing date, and we encourage our students to file the FAFSA by this date for what we call maximum consideration of financial aid. Some financial aid programs are what we call limited resources, so we don't have a way to be fair and equitable in the distribution of those limited resources unless we establish a date for consideration of funds that may not be endless pots, for lack of a better word. So we encourage all students to file by December 1st, and by doing so, it grants you a bigger consideration for a financial aid package. So we do have some students, I already see questions in the Q&A that are coming in our summer term. And summer 2021 is a part of the 2020-21 FAFSA. That FAFSA is available and can be filed. You'll be using tax information from 2 years prior every time you file the FAFSA. So the 2020-21 FAFSA is going to be using 2018 tax information. So you're going to use 2018 financial information if you were accepted for a summer term, or if you're considering coming in the summer term. You want to ensure that you get that FAFSA on file in addition to the 2021-22 FAFSA. The 2021-22 FAFSA became available on October 1st of 2020, and you're going to be using 2019 financial information and tax information there. The FAFSA is an annual application. So you're going to be doing it your incoming year, your sophomore year, your junior year, and your senior year. So just a reminder, it is an annual application and you must reapply every year for consideration of federal aid, institutional grants, and some state grants as well. The FAFSA can be completed on the web at studentaid.gov, like I mentioned before. When you're coming to UCF, you want to think about what it costs to come to our university. And as was mentioned when Ms. Costello gave her information about the university, we're a great value. We managed to keep our cost relatively low, particularly for our in-state students. So the cost to attend the University of Central Florida, and this is an estimate, this is not for all students. There are a variety of different choices and factors that come into play, but we estimate that it costs a student approximately $23,622 in the upcoming 2021-22 academic year to attend the university. This is between the fall and spring semester, and it includes tuition and fees, room and board, transportation to and from the university, an allotment for textbooks, and then an allotment for personal expenses. And those items are just all the things it takes for each of us to maintain ourselves as humans. When we take all of that into account, we get to $23,622. And again, that is a comprehensive student estimated budget, for lack of a better word, and what it would cost to attend in the fall and spring term. For our non-resident students, we have a slightly higher cost of attendance based on out-of-state tuition and fees. And so the cost of attendance for a non-resident student is approximately $38,648 for the upcoming 2021-22 year. It accounts for all of the other items that the in-state cost of attendance accounts for, with higher tuition and fees as it relates to the out-of-state tuition. That said, so how do you tackle this cost of attendance? What type of aid is available to assist students and families with funding your educational expenses? So scholarships come in the form of merit and sometimes need-based awards, and they're normally earned by something the student has done, whether it is their academic qualifications or a talent that the student possesses. The scholarship process starts with a variety of different factors. We have a state-funded scholarship here in the state of Florida called Florida Bright Futures for our Florida residents. Many of our students utilize the Bright Futures program to assist with their educational expenses. There are also merit-based scholarships that are awarded by the Office of Undergraduate Admissions based on students' incoming credentials. And then our colleges and our majors offer scholarships as well. And so we encourage students to also look at your majors and look to your colleges to see if there are any funding opportunities there. And then a lot of our students are able to secure private funding to assist with their educational expenses from a variety of different places. And we're going to go into a little bit more on how students look for scholarships here at the university. We have a great tool called Access to Opportunities, and I'll show you a little bit more about that in the presentation. Grants are need-based aid, and the grants are based on the information found on the FAFSA. When you complete the FAFSA, each family gets a number. It is called the EFC, or the expected family contribution. That number measures a family's financial strength based on the information provided on the FAFSA. And the EFC is often the guide to determine whether or not a student is grant eligible. There is not much a student can do about their grant eligibility, but that's why we want to make sure that we share with you what you can do about garnering as many scholarships as you can, because the ball is in the student's court with that. Work study is a great opportunity where students are able to earn a part of their financial aid package by working typically on campus and earning a biweekly paycheck as a part of their financial aid package. And then loans. Loans are available to assist with educational expenses. They come in a variety of different forms, both need-based and non-need-based. The most common loan we hear about is the direct Stafford subsidized and unsubsidized loan, and I'll differentiate a little bit about those in a bit. And then there's also the Parent Plus loan, and the Parent Plus loan allows a parent to borrow on behalf of their student. The parent is the borrower, and the parent is responsible for repayment. So let's get a little bit into grants. The most common grant that people hear about is the Pell Grant. It's a federally funded program. It is a foundational program that has been in existence for decades, and it is based on that expected family contribution that is derived when the FAFSA is completed. If a student is Pell eligible and meets the priority filing date of December 1st, often that student gets additional grants to help supplement the need that they have based on the information provided on the FAFSA. Another popular grant in the state of Florida for a public institution is the Florida Student Assistant Grant, and that's funded by the Department of Education here in the state of Florida and has specific criteria also linked to the expected family contribution. And then the SEOG, or the Federal Supplemental Educational Opportunity Grant, is available to families with the highest need, and that award is given to students, and the grant ranges anywhere between $100 and $1,200 for the academic year. More information on grants and anything that you're looking for can be found on our website. We are proud of a very comprehensive website that has a plethora of information available for our students and families to learn more about the financial aid process. So Florida Bright Futures, this is a wonderful program offered to our students here in the state of Florida. Students, your eligibility is determined by the Florida Department of Education's Office of Student Financial Assistance, known as OSFA. And that determination is made based on your high school GPA. It is also made based on your ACT and SAT scores, as well as your community service hours. So Bright Futures is determined at the state level. When you are completing your Florida financial aid application, which is an application that students do in their senior year, you want to ensure that if you are choosing to come to the University of Central Florida, you indicate that on your Florida financial aid application. That's how we are able to connect the information of your Bright Futures eligibility once you become a UCF student. Bright Futures is based on a per credit hour amount. Currently, Bright Futures covers 100% of the cost per credit hour for our Florida academic scholars, and then 75% of the cost per credit hour for our Florida medallion scholars. Bright Futures will fund 120 credit hours, meaning typically the number of credit hours required for degree completion. So for 2021-22, barring no changes, Bright Futures, as I mentioned, will cover 100% at the academic level and 75% at the medallion level. So this quote kind of lies with the tenacity needed for the scholarship search. So our greatest weakness lies in giving up. The most certain way to succeed is to try just one more time. And that's so important with scholarships. When students are looking for scholarships, it's easy to get discouraged because the process is long. There's normally something you need to do to get the scholarship. However, students who are diligent and continue to search are the students who really bear the fruit of their labor. So that said, scholarships are everywhere. You can find them in community and religious organizations, internet searches like FastWeb or CatBex, businesses and corporations like Target, Coca-Cola, McDonald's. And then on our financial aid website, we have a comprehensive scholarship search tool for our students called Access to Opportunities. And Access to Opportunities is a great place for students to start their scholarship search process. When a student goes to our financial aid website and clicks on scholarships and you select the A2O link, you're going to be brought to the Access to Opportunities page. On this page, you're going to see a drop down, and on that drop down, there is a link for hours. Those are internal scholarship opportunities here at the university that are selected by our University Scholarship Committee. When you select that tool or that selection, you're going to be then navigated to a page where you do a one-page application that connects you to scholarship opportunities throughout the duration of that academic year. So I encourage all students to do that for the upcoming year because it is going to connect you to a variety of different opportunities. But beyond that, we also have our external scholarship search engine. And this scholarship search tool is expansive. It's pages on top of pages of scholarship opportunities that are available to our students at the university from a variety of different sources. So this is just an example of some of the types of scholarships you may see at a given time. But as the previous slide noted, I just want to make mention that these scholarships are constantly updated, at least monthly, sometimes more frequently based on the amount of scholarship opportunities we're receiving in a given time frame. So I encourage all students to actually visit the scholarship search tool, Access to Opportunities, at least twice a month. And if there's nothing there that you meet the criteria to apply to, that's okay. Revisit it and apply for any and all scholarships for which you meet the criteria. So I'm going to segue into student loans. Student loans are available when students complete the federal application, the FAFSA. If the student is not eligible for need-based aid and will not receive grants, students will receive loans as a part of their financial aid package. Loans do have some differences though. Some students will be eligible for what we call the subsidized loan. The subsidized loan has a need-based component, meaning that a student must demonstrate financial need to qualify for the subsidized loan. The government pays the interest on behalf of the student on any portion of the subsidized loan the student receives while that student is enrolled in school and during the student's period of grace as they enter repayment. So if you are offered a combination of subsidized and unsubsidized loans, it is in the student's best interest to take the subsidized loan first and then determine if they need to borrow any unsubsidized loans. However, because there is a need component, not all students qualify for the subsidized loan. Some students qualify for the unsubsidized loan. The unsubsidized loan is a non-need-based loan, and the interest does begin accruing once it disperses. And so the unsubsidized loan also has some additional eligibility for our students who are deemed independent. When it comes to the unsubsidized loan, please keep in mind that not everyone is going to qualify for the subsidized loan. The interest rate on the unsubsidized loan is relatively low, and we always want to encourage students who do need to borrow to assist with their educational expenses to only borrow what you need. The Parent Plus loan is a loan that is basically the parent's opportunity to assist their student with their educational expenses. It is a credit-based loan, so parents must meet the credit criteria of the U.S. Department of Education and apply for the Plus loan when that application becomes available. For the upcoming 2020-21 year, that application will become available in early July. And so when that application becomes available, you can apply for it. The Parent Plus loan is not a loan. If it was included in your financial aid summary that you received from the university, you do not have to take it. We don't take any action unless you begin the Parent Plus loan process, your credit is approved, and then we certify the loan on behalf of the parent. The Parent Plus loan, again, is here to assist parents with educational expenses, and a parent may borrow up to a student's cost of attendance minus any other financial aid resources the student is receiving in the Parent Plus loan. On our website, again, you'll find a bunch of information. Let's talk about disbursements. The term disbursement simply means the application of your financial aid to your student account. At the University of Central Florida, disbursements take place during the second week of the academic term. So I always like to put that in perspective. So students, when you're looking at your financial aid account, there are some things you can do to increase the likelihood of getting an earlier disbursement. So we start dispersing during the second week of the given semester for that semester, and we disperse every week thereafter, twice a week on Tuesdays and Thursdays. When it comes to disbursement, students want to successfully and regularly monitor their to-do list via MyUCF. Monitoring your to-do list increases your likelihood of ensuring that any document needed for the continued processing of your financial aid is submitted to our office in a timely fashion so that we are able to continue your processing and then not delay your disbursement process. So we encourage students to check your to-do list regularly. Similarly to access to opportunities, I would say check your to-do list at least every other week. If there's any item on your to-do list pertaining to your financial aid, please ensure that you submit that item no later than 60 days before the start of the term. But we actually have an established priority date for deadline or priority date for submission of documents we're requesting of May 30th each year. And we encourage students to get those documents in as soon as possible, again, to increase the likelihood of an earlier disbursement. We have a tool that we utilize in our office called Dynamic Forms. Our students who have selected for the verification process, which is a process that entails our office asking for some additional documentation to continue the processing of your financial aid. Students are typically selected for verification at the federal level. So once the federal government has flagged a FAFSA for verification, it is now the university's responsibility to then continue that verification process and request documents to be able to finalize a student's financial aid file. A student who is selected for verification will at least need to submit the verification worksheet, as well as if the IRS data retrieval tool was not used when submitting the FAFSA, there will be a request for tax returns and in some cases W-2s. All of these documents can be uploaded utilizing the dynamic forms process. If a student has been selected for verification, there is a to-do list item that the student will see on their MyUCF account. That to-do list item will include the link to the dynamic form and allow the students to access their dynamic form using their UCF NID and password. Parents can also complete the verification process through dynamic forms. They must create their own account that is attached to an email address that is different than the student's email address. And in doing that, parents can complete the parental section of the verification worksheet. This process typically runs very smoothly and is really a seamless way that students and parents can coordinate to get these documents in a timely manner. However, not all of our documents are available through dynamic forms. So dynamic forms is what we utilize for our verification process, but other forms can be uploaded using our document and file upload tool found on our website under the forms section. And you just simply upload a PDF file, and we ask for this specific information that has been listed here. And once the file is uploaded, you drop it right here, and then our data entry department receives it, and it can be disseminated to the appropriate department within the Office of Student Financial Assistance. So just a couple of things about enrollment. When you got your financial aid summary on March 1st, it included financial aid under the assumption of full-time enrollment. Full-time enrollment at the University of Central Florida is 12 credit hours in the fall and spring term for our undergraduate students. If by chance you do not enroll full-time in either a fall or a spring term, it can impact your financial aid package. So we encourage students to visit our program eligibility chart that is found under the resource section of our website. And that program eligibility chart will outline the type of enrollment you need for specific awards that are outlined on your financial aid summary, whether or not transient enrollment is accepted for that particular award. So it's a chart that really gets into the details of what a student needs to do in order to receive a particular award. At UCF, the first week of the semester is what we call add, drop, and swap. And that's a time where a student could potentially change their enrollment. They might say, I want to take a different chemistry section. I don't want to take chemistry at all this semester. They might want to add a course that was not a part of their original enrollment. During that time, enrollment is fluctuating, and our office recognizes that. So after add, drop, and swap, we start to solidify financial aid awards based on a student's actual enrollment. So you'll see some fluctuations. So for example, your Bright Futures amount, if you're a Bright Futures recipient that we are estimating Bright Futures for on your financial aid summary, is currently based on 14 credit hours. If by chance you take 12 credit hours, after add, drop, and swap, you're going to see your Bright Futures actually go down a bit because it's correlated directly to the number of credit hours you're taking. If you take 15, then you'll see it go up a bit. At the university, in order to disperse your aid, we have to know that you're academically engaged in your courses. So it's really important during the first week of school for our students to do what some professors call your financial aid assignment, but it's only the first assignment of the semester. And that's how we know that a student has begun the course, shown up, and has academically engaged in the course. We encourage students to do it during the first week. However, it is available throughout the duration of the semester, but talking about increasing the likelihood of a timely disbursement, not engaging in your academic activity could impact your financial aid and could impact the timing of your disbursement. So we just encourage all students to engage in that academic activity in all of their courses during the first week of classes. As I mentioned, disbursement begins after add, drop, and swap. During that second week of classes, you're going to start to see your adjustments on your account. And there are times when not all awards disperse at the same time. What that means is that if a scholarship is ready to go, we have the funding, we have it processed, and we're able to disperse that, but maybe we're waiting on the master promissory note for the loan, then we will disperse the scholarship and apply it to the student's account. We don't wait for everything to be ready at the same time in order for the application of funds to be added to a student's account. Sometimes students want to know, well, will my loan disperse first? Will my scholarship disperse first? And it really just depends. It depends on what funds are available for disbursement. If the funds have been received by the university, has the student met all the requirement for the funds? What I will share is that the Office of Student Account Services does have an order in which they apply funds to a student account. So for example, when aid starts to disperse and be applied to a student account, the first charge that is tackled is tuition. After tuition, if the student is an on-campus student, the next charge that is tackled is housing. After housing, if the student has utilized one of our book purchase programs that I'm going to share with you shortly, that's the next charge tackled. And finally, if the student has a meal plan and all of those other charges have been taken care of, the final charge tackled is a meal plan. Not all students have all the same charges. So keep that in mind. If a student's financial aid exceeds what they owe the university, then they receive what we call a refund. And a refund is when there's financial aid or financial resources in excess of what the student owes the university, then we issue them those excess funds, either in the form of a check, or most of our students, and we encourage this, are set up for direct deposit, and those funds are directly deposited into the bank account of their choice. Deferment happens when a student has any type of financial aid. And what a deferment does is it delays the fee payment deadline for a student. A student who has a deferment does not necessarily have to pay by that established fee payment deadline. So let's say a student has a 75% Bright Futures, but no other financial aid, and they're not choosing to take any loans. Tuition is typically due on the second Friday of the semester, but because that student has a Bright Futures award, the amount that is above and beyond the Bright Futures, what the Bright Futures will pay, will be then charged at a later time in the semester, normally about midway through the semester. As long as the student has any type of financial aid, the student gets a deferment. Normally during the second week of school, the student is able to access what we call their fee invoice through MyUCF. And when they access their fee invoice during that second week, they will see an updated due date that is a later due date in the semester. Short-term advances. So as I've mentioned a few times in this presentation, financial aid typically disperses, the disbursement process begins during the second week of school, but we don't want our students to wait till the second week of school to start to get their books. So we have two ways that students can purchase their books prior to the beginning of the semester. And one is called the short-term advance for books. The short-term advance for books is a form available on our financial aid website under the form section. It typically becomes available about 1 month before the given semester. And if a student is enrolled half-time and has completed all of the items on their to-do list and has enough financial aid to cover their charges on their student account, they can get up to $600 in the short-term advance to assist with their book purchasing. If a student does not have enough financial aid, the student would just indicate on the application that they're not utilizing financial aid as their source of repayment, and then that student can get up to $300 to assist with purchasing books. There is a deadline established for each semester for the short-term advance, and that deadline is going to be listed on the form. The other option a student has is called the textbook purchase program. And a student must choose, if they're going to use one of these programs, to either use one or the other in a given semester. So a student who has already gotten a short-term advance cannot take advantage of the textbook purchase program in a given semester, and a student who is enrolled in the textbook purchase program cannot actually get a short-term advance in that semester as well. So that said, the textbook purchase program, sorry, I got a bit tongue-tied there, is available for students who are enrolled at least half-time. Different from the short-term advance, the textbook purchase program allows a student to opt in using your MyUCF portal to this textbook program. Typically, it becomes available about 3 weeks before the semester begins. You want to ensure that your to-do list items are complete. You see, that's a reoccurring theme. So we want to encourage you to review the to-do list and ensure that all of those documents get in as soon as possible. It is actually available at the main campus, Rosen, and the downtown campus. And I'm sorry that I missed that when I reviewed this presentation. And you can utilize it to purchase books directly from the bookstore with your UCF ID card and the information on the ID card. You can charge up to $600 in books and supplies. And what will essentially happen is when your financial aid disperses, this is an item that has been charged on your account and it will be deducted from your financial aid. So really quickly, just want to highlight how you keep your financial aid and review the renewal criteria for your various awards. If you're getting Bright Futures, review the renewal criteria for Bright Futures. There is a GPA and hours renewal for Bright Futures. If you've been offered a merit-based scholarship from the university, review your award letter because there are renewal criteria that you must follow in order to continue to receive those awards. But federal aid has what we call satisfactory academic progress. And at the university, we review this every term. And we're looking to see that students have completed 70% of the hours required for degree completion, that they aren't well above the hours that they would have needed to graduate. So they need to be within 150% of the hours attempted required for degree completion. Our undergraduate students must maintain a 2.0 GPA, and you must be moving towards your degree. So we're looking that you are actually taking courses that are going towards your degree. So just wanted to make mention of that. And finally, I did see a question in the chat about what happens if things are different. And so the FAFSA, as I mentioned before, captures data from 2 years ago. And for some families, this year is nothing like that year. And there are times when there's been loss of employment or death of a parent or a spouse. Sometimes there's unusual medical expenses. And there are also times when a student may not be able to answer any of the dependency questions on the FAFSA yes, but they might have a unique circumstance like the student was abandoned or abused by their biological and or adoptive parent. In those cases, we do have a department. That department is called Professional Judgment, and that department utilizes a variety of tools and collects information to determine if the professional judgment process is a process that would be useful for a family. And so I've put their email address here. It's sfasapnpj@ucf.edu. If you've had major changes in your familial situation and the FAFSA does not capture that, that would be the department within our office that you want to reach out to, and they are very helpful in trying to help you navigate that. I just want to be very forthcoming. There are times that even though there have been changes, it may not change your eligibility, and they try to help families navigate that up front prior to starting this process because the professional judgment process does require quite a bit of documentation. That said, just a few things to remember. The FAFSA does become available on October 1st. We encourage you to file it early each and every year and use the data retrieval tool. If eligible, it reduces your likelihood of being selected for the verification process. And if by chance you are still selected for verification, at least you don't have to supply our office with IRS documentation because the information has been directly inputted into your FAFSA. Pay attention to deadlines, payment deadlines, the housing payment deadline, withdrawal deadlines. Review the academic calendar at the beginning of each semester so that you have an understanding of all the different dates that could impact you. We encourage you to visit our website. There's so much information on our website. It's a really useful tool. Almost everything you need to know about the financial aid process is listed on our website. And we encourage each and every one of our students to apply for scholarships often. Make it your job. You know, if it's what you do on Saturday mornings for an hour is to look for scholarships, it really can be a fruitful endeavor. That said, we are available to assist students. We are currently in a new paradigm because we are in a new normal. So we are doing appointments only, a hybrid of virtual and in-person appointments. So if you're interested in speaking with a financial aid counselor more in depth, please visit our website to make an appointment so that we can assist you. That said, it was mentioned earlier that at UCF, we really care about our students and we want to make sure that students have all of the services and tools they need. So beyond just the Office of Student Financial Assistance, we work with a variety of on-campus partners. And one of those partners is UCF Cares. And we want to make sure that our students and our incoming students are aware of the services that they provide to ensure that our students here at UCF are well taken care of. That is the end of my presentation. So I'm going to go ahead and stop my share. And I see that there are many questions and answers that I have not had a chance to read yet. So I am going to turn it over to Mr. Dahlstrom to send the questions my way.
So many questions. Thank you so much. That was a really, really thorough presentation, Dr. Manzel, and I'm sure that our viewers got hopefully a lot of questions answered. I was busy typing and trying to respond to things, so I have flagged a number of questions that I thought would be important for maybe the entire audience to hear. Forgive me if it's something that you were covering in the session. I'm trying to type and listen at the same time.
No problem.
But we'll see how many of these we can get through in the next roughly 35, 37 minutes.
Okay.
So let's start out here with a question. This individual looks like they were admitted to another institution. We are not going to name that other school.
Okay.
They're in Tampa.
Okay.
Uh, but that other school sent them a scholarship award letter with their admission to UCF. And at UCF, we just gave them the financial aid package, and it only had Bright Futures and loans on it. So the question is does UCF have some sort of merit scholarship, and how can we apply for those scholarships? Loans, of course, being the last resort. So I can talk about this, but then I wanted to actually ask if you could touch upon some of the other ways that students may be able to qualify for other aid. So undergraduate admissions is the office that's responsible for awarding merit scholarships to newly admitted students. The way that the process works in a nutshell is that a student applies, they're offered admission from the admissions committee, and then a scholarship committee that is separate from the admissions committee reviews those admitted students and determines whether they are eligible for some type of merit scholarship. Those are traditionally our Pegasus scholarships. You may have heard that phrase or of that award in the past, and there are levels to that. Not everybody is going to qualify, unfortunately, for a Pegasus award or other type of merit scholarship from the admissions office. In fact, the percentage is quite low. It's, I believe, around 25% or so. So if in fact you were recently offered admission, or if you were offered admission some time ago and have not heard about a scholarship award being offered to you, you may inquire with us by sending an email to scholarships, that's plural, scholarships with an S on the end, at ucf.edu, scholarships at ucf.edu, and simply make an inquiry. Our scholarship coordinator and our scholarship team will review your academic credentials and determine whether you meet the qualifications for a merit award. In some cases, they're able to make an offer, and in many, many cases, unfortunately, we're not. And that can be for a variety of reasons. It can be because the credentials are just not quite high enough to where we are awarding students. It can also be because of lack of funding. If things get too late in the year, there is unfortunately not an endless supply of scholarship funds. So I encourage you to act on this quickly. Do not wait until summer or shortly before the time comes to enroll in classes to begin wondering about how to pay for college. If you believe that you would be eligible for an award, or if you simply want to do your due diligence and double check, I encourage you to just send that email as quickly as possible. So Dr. Menzel, what other options might students have if their award package really only lists Bright Futures and loans?
I would, again, go back to the Access to Opportunities portal and encourage our students to visit that regularly to see if there are any scholarship opportunities for which they meet the criteria and apply for all of those scholarships for which they meet the criteria. I would also encourage students to inquire about what's available at their college and major level. So, and look what's available within that department, what's available within that major or college. Go to the actual specific website of your college. Sometimes scholarship opportunities are listed there. So I would encourage students to do that. On our scholarship section of our website, we do have some links to additional university resources, such as the various schools and colleges. And then I would also go back to some of those other external opportunities like FastWeb and CapEx and looking at those opportunities. One of the things I didn't mention, and you guys are maybe a little bit further along in the college going process because you're here at this admitted students presentation, but College Board has a really great scholarship that along the way in your college going process, there's various phases where you can submit. I've done these various things. And I believe one of the last phases is submitting some letters of acceptance. So, that, and it's called the Opportunity Scholarship, if I'm remembering correctly. So just really keep your eyes and ears out for what opportunities may be available. There are a variety of different opportunities. And again, with scholarships, it's really about the long haul. I just want to be very forthcoming. I try to be transparent. You're probably not going to get all of the scholarships for which you apply, you're probably not going to get most of the scholarships for which you apply. And it doesn't mean that you're not an amazing student. It means that these funds are very competitive. And so what I would say is that even when it feels like it's not being fruitful, continue to look for scholarships, continue to apply for scholarships, because it's those students who are undaunted by the ones that they didn't get that really reap the benefit of it. And I always like to give an example of a student here at the university who was an engineering major who made it his business to look for scholarships every Saturday morning. And by the time he graduated, he had gotten over $60,000 in funding over the course of his 4 years at the university, and he was able to graduate debt-free.
I wish that someone had had that conversation with me when I was going to college about making scholarship search a habitual process. Exactly. And making that something that you don't just do as a freshman, you don't just do as an admitted student, but that you do, you know, once a month, every other month, at least several times a year, because the awards, you know, new ones come about all the time. And if you just get into the habit of bookmarking scholarship sites and having, you know, an application essay sort of at the ready, that can just bear so much fruit, like you said. There's another funny example of a student, and this just shows you how long I've been in this business, but probably 15 years ago when I was getting started in admissions, there was a student in our office who he identified as a male, he was a male, but there was a scholarship that was earmarked for females. And it was, you know, it was from some women's organization. And he took a chance and applied for it just because he's like, you know, what are they going to do? Just tell me no. And he got it because nobody else applied for it. So to Dr. Menzel's point, you know, some of them are highly competitive, but some scholarships just are so far under the radar, or it's such a small amount that people don't want to take the time and effort to apply for it for a couple $100. But that couple $100 could be your books for a semester. And better to save that than take a loan out and then pay interest on it. So just continue to try and exhaust all options.
And the young man that I was mentioning earlier, he shared that one of his philosophies was there was no scholarship too small, because for $250 scholarship becomes $1,000 for the semester, right? So he saw them. So he went after whatever scholarship he thought he met the criteria to receive, and he got small ones and he got larger ones.
Yeah. So thank you for that. Let's move on to, and I know that housing isn't necessarily your area of expertise. Certainly it's not mine. There will be a housing session and they can probably address other housing related financial questions in greater detail tomorrow. But do you know if there are any affiliated housing scholarships available? Is that anything that you are aware of?
So I want to make sure I'm answering the right question. So are you looking for scholarships specifically for housing? Because what I would venture to say is that is possible, and I would encourage the student to look at access to opportunities. However, if you're talking specifically about housing, most scholarships are not earmarked for a specific educational expense. There are a few. There are a few that are specifically for tuition and fees. There are a few that are specifically for housing or specifically for books. We do see those. But the vast majority of scholarships can be used for any educational expense that a student has. And those educational expenses are those things that I listed in the cost of attendance. So anything from books to housing or anything else you have. So if it's a on-campus housing award or on-campus housing charge and you have an award such as a scholarship, once your tuition is paid, housing is the next item that student account starts to apply resources to. If you live off campus and we issue a refund to you as an institution, if you get a refund in the form of a direct deposit, you can use it for any educational expense you have. So you can use it to pay your rent off campus. So I hope that answers the question. There may be a housing scholarship out there, but most scholarships aren't that specific.
Yeah. Great, thank you. There were a lot of questions about Bright Futures and when that information would become available, when those awards are given out and the notification is sent. Can you address that for us?
I can. So with Bright Futures, what I will say is that notification normally comes from, not normally, it comes from Florida Department of Education. That doesn't come specifically from us. However, in our office, we have utilized the high school credentials we have on file with the university to render estimates for our students. So in your financial aid summary that went out this past week, if Bright Futures is listed, that means based on the information we have, and we don't have everything in its totality, but based on the information we have, we are estimating that you may meet the criteria to receive Bright Futures. The official notification from OSFA, the Florida Department of Education, normally becomes available towards the end of May, sometimes early June, is when the universities start to get that information. However, individual students, if you meet the criteria, doing the Florida financial aid application is the first step in identifying whether or not you're eligible for the scholarship. If you are eligible, let's say you've already met the 25 required on the ACT and you have the 3.0. Once your final grades are certified with your high school, then Bright Futures will be able to confirm that you have met all the criteria, you've done your 75 community service hours, and this is for the 75%. When they get all of that going, then they will notify you officially with the Department of Education. So it's really based on graduation, but they will also do preliminary. It looks like you are meeting the eligibility criteria until final grades are in.
Thank you. There were a number of FAFSA questions that were posed. I'm going to try and combine two here. One question is the FAFSA required for merit-based awards only? And then the kind of follow-up that's a different question but related is, does it make sense to fill it out if the family knows that they're probably not going to qualify based on prior year's income, and maybe there were changes to income since the prior year tax return?
Okay, so for our merit-based awards here at the university, we do not require the FAFSA for those awards. So if you are offered a merit-based award from the Office of Undergraduate Admission, the FAFSA is not required as an eligibility requirement for that award. The FAFSA is also not required currently for the Bright Future Scholarship. That's the Florida financial aid application that I just spoke about. However, the FAFSA is required for a variety of other scholarships. So we encourage students to complete a FAFSA because you don't want to see that opportunity on access to opportunities and see an upcoming deadline and know I don't have a FAFSA on file. It's going to take 10 days for the university to get it. So we encourage students to go ahead and have one on file. And if you are not tapping into the funds that may be available by way of the FAFSA, that is fine. If all you qualify for is an unsubsidized loan and you have no intention of taking that unsubsidized loan, we're not processing it unless you accept it. So it really is just kind of like a safety net. So we do encourage families to complete the FAFSA. That said, and I want to make sure I got the second question correct. Does it make sense to complete the FAFSA with 2-year prior information if that information is no longer pertinent? Am I getting that right, Chris?
Yeah, correct.
And the answer to that is yes, because the FAFSA would still need to be submitted with that information because that's the tax base year associated with the FAFSA. And then that slide that I showed towards the end with the SFA, SAP, and PJ at ucf.edu email, that would be the process to say, hey, our family situation has changed drastically. I know the FAFSA reflects this income. That is no longer our situation. This is now what we're looking like. And would a professional judgment be appropriate? But we still have to have a valid FAFSA on file in order to begin the professional judgment process. So you still want to do the FAFSA with that old information, even though it's no longer pertinent. And then the professional judgment process is the appropriate avenue to update those elements to the FAFSA through our office.
So I think this is along the same lines. What happens if a student is in a situation where the parents are not able to contribute toward college expenses? If they're not getting support from parents, is there a different way to go about qualifying for financial aid? Can the student do that on their own?
So in most cases, and I'm going to be very transparent, in most cases, financial aid dependency is determined specifically by those questions outlined on the FAFSA. Are you 24? Are you a grad student? Are you married? Do you have dependents for whom you provide 51% of their support? Are you a veteran? I'm forgetting a few probably. Have you aged out of foster care? Are you at risk for homelessness? So they're very specific questions. I probably forgot a couple, but they're very specific questions outlined on the FAFSA that determine dependency status. However, there are times when the FAFSA doesn't capture that. So a very common example we see is that a student was raised in the custody of a family member, but was never officially adopted. So that student has a grandparent that they have lived with. That grandparent is technically their legal guardian. All their K through 12 paperwork was completed by that grandparent, but the grandparent is not a valid parent on the FAFSA. That's a process also within the professional judgment department called dependency override. And then we would have to take a look at the documentation that student has and determine if that student can be deemed an independent student for financial aid purposes. Those are, and I try to be as transparent as possible. Those are complicated and complex familial situations typically. If your parent has been in your life, is your parent for all intents and purposes, but may not be in a position to contribute or has chosen not to contribute, you are still a dependent for financial aid purposes based on the information provided on the FAFSA. If a parent has refused to complete the FAFSA and does not provide any type of financial support for a student, meaning the student is on the parent's insurance, the student doesn't drive a car owned by the parent, there's no financial support at all, there is a process where we can continue the financial aid process, but the student would only be eligible for unsubsidized loans. And so that's basically we call it parental nonassist in our office. It limits the type of aid for which the student qualifies, but it is the only avenue we have available if a parent is unwilling to file a FAFSA and provides absolutely no financial support for a student.
And so that process of initiating those conversations with you through the professional judgment process is on your website?
It is, and that's SFA, SAP, and PJ at ucf.edu, and I can share that in the chat. I'll also share in the chat when I'm done talking, or if Linda or Angelica could share the Florida Financial Aid website, as well as our SFA, SAP, and PJ email address. Those options are available to families who have unique circumstances. I would ask that if you've had a small change in income, please don't reach out to SAP and PJ because it's not going to be a change in your eligibility. When we talk about a change in your income, we're normally talking about 20% or more of an impact on a family. And so if there's been approximately 20% or more, that's when eligibility starts to change. One of the things the SAP and PJ department will evaluate is whether a professional judgment is worth a family's while, because again, it does take documentation and collecting documentation and supplying documentation, and it is definitely a process. So we don't want to put a family through that process if it's not going to be fruitful on the back end. So we try to at least see if it's worth our while and worth the family's while to go through the motions of determining if there's going to be a change in eligibility.
And these procedures are outlined by the Federal Department of Education.
Correct.
These are not UCF policies and hoops and hurdles that we are throwing up in your way. Financial aid has more, and I say this in the most diplomatic and kindest way possible, but red tape associated with it because these processes involve federal guidelines and regulations. And so for those of you who are watching and listening, who have to go through some of these processes, whether it is this appeal process or the professional judgment process, or verification, just be aware. It takes time and your patience is appreciated. These are federal rules and policies, though, that have to be abided by. I just wanted to throw that out there because I know you guys get a lot of flack sometimes because it's a challenging process, and I think folks don't fully realize, why there's so much to do. So I wanted to put that out there, but I do see
Thank
that.
you.
Thank you. Those links are up there. So
yes, and Angelica and Linda, I was able to get them out. So
thanks.
No
You
problem.
had mentioned loans just a moment ago. If a student is under the age of 18, let's say that they're enrolling at the age of 17 and they're having to set up this stuff now, can they take a loan out? Are there any required restrictions on loans for students under the age of 18?
Great question. And the answer is no, because these loans are not credit based. So they do not require that there's a credit check or anything to that effect for federally funded student loans. The student would simply accept the loans through their MyUCF portal, and then they become a student loan borrower.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I lost my place here. So can you talk a little bit about, this may be more of a student accounts question, but when a student comes to UCF, they're starting out the first time, are they required to set up a bank account? Does that have to be linked up with the university? And what is the purpose of that?
Okay, so there isn't a requirement to establish a bank account. And we do have a university banking partner. It is Fairwinds Credit Union. However, a student does not have to have a bank account with Fairwinds to reap the benefits of direct deposit for their refunds or anything to that effect. If a student is looking to establish direct deposit, and this is a student accounts question, but I just happen to have the answer. If the student is looking to establish direct deposit, all they need is their routing number and their bank account number. And by doing that, we do encourage our students, and approximately 90+% of our students do utilize direct deposit. Direct deposit is just the most efficient way to get your funds if you have a refund coming your way. If you are looking for a check, checks are cut once a week and then mailed. So we're looking at, a week at least, USPS. So we're looking at a week or so to get your check when direct deposit can happen within 24 hours, depending on with whom you bank.
And along the same lines, how do students pay for classes if they're not using financial aid? If the institution isn't, getting a disbursement from an external source, how do students go about paying for classes?
Great. They would do so through their MyUCF portal. You can log on to MyUCF and pay for your classes either with a check, an electronic check, which would be my suggestion, because if you use a credit card, there is a 2% convenience fee. So I would suggest that you utilize an electronic check if possible, and you can render a payment that way. Also, we have a check depository on campus where you would be able to drop a check off, and it goes into a safe in the Office of Student Account Services. So there are a variety of different ways that students can render payment. Keep in mind, though, if you do not have financial aid, the fee payment deadline is typically the second Friday of the given semester. So you do want to make sure you pay by then. Any payment made after the second Friday of the given semester would render a $100 late fee. The other thing I will share is that we do have a payment plan available on campus. The payment plan is only for those students who do not have any financial aid and are making preparations to pay out of pocket. If you're paying out of pocket, the payment plan allows a student to elect to pay 50% of their charges by the fee payment deadline. And this is specifically for tuition. This is not available for housing. So 50% of their tuition charges for by the fee payment deadline of that second Friday, and then the remaining balance is typically due about midway through the semester. And if you remember when I talked about deferments in the presentation, students with any financial aid, your financial aid creates a deferment which extends your fee payment deadline to approximately midway in the semester, and that's why students with financial aid are not eligible for the payment plan, because you're already getting the benefit of that later payment date. So there's no need for it.
Okay, thank you. Earlier in the presentation, you had mentioned that financial aid award letters were sent out or were made available on March 1st. For students who don't see that, do you know what they should do or when they can anticipate getting that information?
Students who did not get a financial aid award letter, I would say if you were recently admitted, very, very recently admitted, that could be part of the reason, and we will continuously send out award letters. March 1st was just our first batch for our incoming students. So more award letters are forthcoming. That would be one thing if you were recently admitted. The other thing is you want to make sure you have a valid FAFSA on file. If the only type of aid for which you qualify is federal aid and we don't have a FAFSA on file, then we would not have generated an award letter. With the FAFSA, you want to make sure there are no rejected items. You also want to make sure you have a valid social security number on file with the university. So that's one thing that I think is really important. So a student does not have to necessarily input your social security number on your application, even though there's a little pop-up that tells you it's probably in your best interest to do it. But if you don't, then we don't have a way to connect our FAFSA information with your student account, your Bright Futures information with your student account, nor your Florida prepaid information with your student account, because all of those things are connected to your social security number. If you're not sure if you have a social security number on file with the university, you can go into your My UCF portal and you want to go into the Student Center under demographics, and you're looking for what we call the national ID. If you see all X's, that means there is no social security number on file with the university, and that could be your reason you did not get an award letter. If that is the case, Chris, I don't have it readily available, but I do know there's a landing page for students to upload that information. So maybe we can share that.
I can see if I can find that quickly here. I'll ask the next question and then I'll do some research while you're answering that. So there were a couple of questions that were asked about housing, and there is a housing session tomorrow. So for those of you with questions that we're unable to answer, or who have questions that, you know, maybe don't necessarily relate to payment for housing, which is what we're going to try and tackle now, please show up for that housing session tomorrow afternoon. But the question I wanted to ask, because I've seen it a couple times, is housing paid in full, or is this a lease type payment? I think students and families may not be real familiar with how housing is paid. Do we pay it month to month, or do you know much about that?
I can talk to that. Okay, so when we're talking about housing, your housing is assessed at the beginning of the semester. So if you're living on campus housing, to be very specific, on campus housing, there is a charge at the beginning of the semester. And because, contrary to what a lot of people believe, I don't like math that much, I'm going to use a round number. So let's say your housing for the semester is $3,000. It is not going to be divided over the course of 5 months. So, which would be $600. That's why I use round numbers. And so, but it's going to be at the beginning of the semester, you're going to see a charge of $3,000. If you have Bright Futures and Florida prepaid and a loan, for example, then those resources are first going to tackle your tuition, and then they'll start to tackle your housing charge. If you have enough to cover your housing charge, then the housing administration department can see that, and they see that you have additional resources coming in. If you do not have enough, let's say you have a shortfall of $500, you want to pay that $500 by the established housing deadline of the given semester. I hope that clarifies.
It does, thank you. So I am getting ready. I'm sorry.
I think Angelica was able to find the Qualtrics form.
She was, so I just put it up there too. Thank you, Angelica, for doing that. I think we found it at the same time. As Dr. Menzel was saying, if you have not submitted your social security number to us, if you know that you omitted that at the time that you applied, if it wasn't asked of you, I really honestly don't know if there's a way for you to tell if your social is on file with us.
There is.
There is?
In My UCF, and you go into your student center and you look at your demographic information and you're looking for your national ID. If you're a national ID, you know what? 2 things. If it's all X's, then we don't have one on file. And even if you see numbers, make sure they're the right numbers, because if they are not, then there are times, well, not there are times, then we won't be able to link that to the other. It might as well be all X's if it's not right.
Pardon me. So thank you for that.
No problem.
So I am putting in the chat here the link to a Qualtrics form. This is where you will upload your Social Security information to us. As Dr. Manziel said, this is critical to obtaining financial aid. So if you are eligible for aid and there's no way to match up your FAFSA information because your social isn't on file, you've got to do it through here. Take it from us. This is a legitimate link. This is a secure link. It is run by the institution, by the university, so you can have faith and trust in us requesting this, but it's the only way that that disbursement is going to happen. So you've got to use that and make sure that that's on file with us.
And Chris, I would just add, you want to do this sooner rather than later because it can delay the entire financial aid process. And I did want to mention the Florida prepaid program, because I do see that there were a couple of questions. Florida prepaid is not administered by the Office of Student Financial Assistance. However, as long as you have a valid Social Security number on file, our Office of Student Account Services is able to match your Florida prepaid account with your student account on file with the university, determine the type of plan you have, and what type of charges can be taken care of with that plan from one semester to the next. So you having a valid Social Security number on file is essential.
Thank you. Let's talk real quick, and we've got about 6 minutes left, about fees. There were a couple of questions about various fees that are included in the cost of attendance, and then another question that came through about cost of attendance is meal plan. So let's try and tackle the meal plan first. Is that included in cost of attendance? Can aid be used for that? And then what are these fees that we're charging people for? Can you address some of that?
Some of it, fees are normally assessed and established by the Office of Student Account Services. So I can give general answers about fees. There are a variety of fees that make up the cost per credit hour, and those fees are approved by our Board of Trustees and ultimately the Board of Governors. And so they are typical fees associated with the college going experience. There are also some additional fees, such as a student might be in a course that has a material and supply fee. So there may be some specific types of special materials that particular course requires that is provided by the university. So on Student Accounts website, and when you ask the next question, I'll get that. They break down the fees and I will share that. In regard to whether or not the meal plan is included in the cost of the attendance, the answer is absolutely. We try to include all components it takes for a student to be a student. So our cost of attendance is based on a student's residency, housing, and enrollment status. So a student who is living on campus or off campus has an allotment for board, and board is essentially food that you need to eat. So those amounts are based on that student having to eat. So we take all of that into account. We use a variety of different resources and tools to determine the amount allotted for room and board. And so you can see on our website what is allotted for board. It covers almost all of the meal plans in its totality. The most expensive one, it might be a little bit less than the most expensive one, but then also keep in mind that we do take into account personal expenses in the cost of attendance as well. So there is a little bit of wiggle room to move the categories around. So the cost of attendance is just an estimate of what it costs a student to attend the university. We recognize some students will spend less and some students will spend more. However, it governs the maximum financial aid package a student can receive.
Thank you. This is a really interesting question that I don't know has been answered before. I don't even know if I've seen anyone ask it, but I think it's interesting and you may know the answer. Someone is curious about when they take out a loan, do you know if they have the option of repaying that at their own pace? Can they pay it off if there's a windfall of money in a couple of years?
Absolutely.
Or do they, like me, have to wait 30 years to pay it all off?
So I will say absolutely, because there is no prepayment penalty with federally funded loans. So if by chance your rich uncle said, hey, got some money for you, and you were like, I'd like to pay these loans off before I graduate, no harm, no foul. Now, that is specifically for federally funded loans. When it comes to private educational loans, and private educational loans are available, we do have a link on our website with those. Private educational loans are funded by a variety of financial institutions. The criteria vary from one institution to the next. The loan repayment terms vary from one institution to the next. So if by chance you are borrowing a private loan, I would encourage you to review all of the small print on your disclosure statement prior to making payment, because that is different than a federally funded loan. But our federally funded loans, there is no harm, no foul in making a payment early. You can also, the other thing I like to tell students, one of the things we didn't really talk about is financial literacy, but we have a great financial literacy program here at UCF called Sensible Nights. And one of the nuggets that we like to share with students, if you are borrowing an unsubsidized loan, you can always make interest-only payments every quarter, and that reduces your principal balance when you graduate. And I don't want to get too nitty-gritty because it's like a whole financial literacy lesson, but essentially interest gets added to your principal balance every quarter because it does these two things called compounding and capitalizing. And when that happens, it's increasing the amount that you've borrowed essentially. But every quarter, there's no penalty for you to say, oh, I had $300 in interest. I'll give you those $300. Even if I don't have any other payment to make, then that just keeps what you graduate with in debt with what you borrowed.
If you can do that, take it from someone who has 2 private school education loans that they are still paying off 20 years later. If you can pay off that interest, do it. I look at my statement every month and I realize just how little goes to the actual principal balance and how much was accrued in interest. The banks are very transparent with where your money is going, and they'll tell you exactly how much you borrowed. And, you know, I'm not good at math either, but on a round number, $1,000 loan over 20 years, you easily could pay $4,000 or $5,000 on it because of that compound interest. So if you have the ability to do that, do it. So with that, great way to end the program talking about financial literacy. That Sensible Nights program is so valuable and has won a national award. So congratulations on all that you and your staff are doing to help people be responsible about borrowing. I believe they have an Instagram page, Sensible Nights.
Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook.
Thank you. Okay, so if someone could put in the chat how to spell that. I think it's sensible with a C, C-E-N-T, right?
Yes, it is. I'm going to actually put the Sensible Nights link.
That'd be great. Here. Thank you.
And Chris, before we wrap up, I just want to thank Angelica and Linda for answering so many questions while we have been having this conversation.
Yeah, I wish we had more time and could get to all of them because I know that this is a really important topic. So for those of you with questions regarding merit scholarships, again, these are the awards that come through admissions. You can email us at scholarships@ucf.edu. I did put that in the chat a few moments ago. If folks have questions, though, about financial aid, what's the best way for them to reach your office, Karima?
So our office can be reached in a variety of different ways. Our phone number is 407-823-2827. I would be very transparent that during peak times, there is an extended wait time, but I wanted to share that. And then also we have an email address, and that is finaid@ucf.edu. FINAID@ucf.edu. And then again, if you would like to speak with a financial aid counselor in more detail, you can make an appointment by visiting our website. And thank you, Linda. And the appointment link has been sent as well. And I have sent the financial literacy link. And I hope that the information we provided today help you navigate your journey with college going, but specifically with financing your education.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Mansell and Angelica and Linda. Really wonderful, valuable program. Thank you, Elizabeth, for being here and helping out as well in the chat, answering so many questions. So it's time for us to log off of Zoom. Thank you for those of you who stayed with us for the past hour and a half. Actually, I guess we're going on 2 hours now. We really appreciate your time today. I hope you have a chance to revisit the admissions virtual open house page and click on that link We will be starting our live from UCF session on both our Facebook Live page or our YouTube page. They will be simulcasting. So we have crews that are standing by live on campus to show you a little bit about what's going on and give you a peek onto the UCF campus. So please join us for that. And we hope to see you back here tomorrow or later on in the week. Again, thank you all for joining us and have a great day. Go Knights and charge on.
Charge on.